Thank you, Isabel, and thank you all for being here. This is a real pleasure for us. Arizona State University is very committed to its relationship with Mexico. We're very invested in the relationship as a Hispanic serving institution and as a border state public research university that assumes responsibility for the well-being of our communities. We feel that it's very central to our mission and to our charter to build bridges across the border and collaborate with Mexican counterparts on a whole range of issues. I mean, obviously, we live in the Sonoran Desert, right? So environmental issues are paramount, and you know, that border is kind of a line on a map, but our destiny is very much shared, whether we're talking about the North American economy, sustainability questions, even democracy and rule of law, and some of the other subjects that have been touched upon at this North Capitol Forum. So, as my boss, President Michael Crow at ASU, likes to say, there is no scenario in which Arizona thrives in the future if Mexico doesn't. So we're all in this together. And this is a great conversation that I'm looking forward to because it brings together a lot of our partners. In addition to my ASU hat, I'm also a board member of the U.S.-Mexico Foundation. So it's a thrill to be at this North Capitol Forum. Enrique called me in January and said, I have an idea of something we could do. And, you know, I thought we would have like maybe a day with a couple of panels, but for those of you who know Enrique, it's no surprise that this is a little bit more than that. But it's fantastic to have these conversations here. The U.S.-Mexico Foundation, we're doing a lot institutionally. ASU is with the foundation. Enrique's team actually works out of our space in DC, our ASU center in DC. So I think somebody last night made the analogy that the 3 North American countries are not just neighbors, but they're roommates. And in the case of the foundation and ASU, it might be literally true. So let's get started. Also, I should point out that while this is ostensibly an ASU panel, really the Tec de Monterrey has the advantage here numbers-wise, because in addition to Juan Pablo, Mafer is Exatec, right? You graduated from the campus here in Mexico City. And I'm a proud graduate of the Secundaria Bilingüe Isaac Newton in Chihuahua, which is a Tec, as many of you know, the Tec has high schools across Mexico and many cities and some middle schools. And I graduated from the Tec Secundaria. So this is fantastic. So Maria, let me start with you. You, as Isabel mentioned in her introduction, oversee the learning enterprise at Arizona State University, which I think we described as one of 3 pillars at the university. And if I weren't a colleague of yours and not familiar with Arizona State University, I might scratch my head and say to myself, wait, you oversee the learning enterprise at the university? Isn't the whole university a learning enterprise? So maybe talk a little bit about, you know, what is this thing, the learning enterprise, and how do you organize it and go about fulfilling, I think the avowed mission is to create universal access to social and economic opportunities at every stage of life, which seems like no small task. But please tell us about the learning enterprise.
Yes, thank you, Andres, and thank you everyone for being here. I'll try to not speak to people in the back and but apologize for the type of arrangement here. But the learning enterprise represents the pillar of the university that's focused on getting all our learning assets. So to your point, ASU is a learning enterprise. It has thousands of courses, videos, assets that really should be available for the whole community. And so historically, as universities looked at serving just people in degree programs. And so when we looked at ASU's charter about measuring our success, who we include and not who we exclude, and taking fundamental responsibilities for the communities we served, in addition to serving our students, which are our degree-seeking students, and that's the academic enterprise, and in addition to all the research and knowledge enterprise, we felt important to create a learning enterprise that would be focused on ensuring that all those assets that were being created by our faculty and staff and schools were actually the benefit would go to everyone in the community. And so my team's job is to figure out how to take every asset that ASU has and ensure everyone in our community has access to it, and then create new assets where there might be gaps. And so that addresses everything from pre-K to 80 plus and everything in between, including college pathways. And we also have, ASU, K through 12, high schools. We have, I think we even have some elementary schools. We have upskilling portfolios. We really want to serve everyone in our community across their learning needs. And I think that's really important because historically, if we look at the US population, only 38% have a bachelor's degree. And less people are feeling confident in our research universities as really being there for them. They see it as, something on the hill for just those people that are getting degrees. And we wanted to make sure is that as a public research university, we are serving the public, and that means everyone, and that everyone finds some sort of relevant learning associated with ASU. And so it can be, as an example, we created a boot camp that's available for everyone, and it's a financial literacy boot camp for our families, and we share it. Let's say our students apply, and we'll share it with them and their families to say, hey, you want to learn about things like credit scores, credit cards, etc.? We have a program for you too. And so right away, we're able to connect not just with the student that's applying to a degree program, but with their entire family. So that's just one example, and I'll stop there.
Great, thank you. And I was also thinking about, and I was struck how at the panel yesterday afternoon, for those of you who were there, Monica Aspe, the CEO of AT&T in Mexico, made a pitch almost for this conversation. I don't think she quite used the word imperative, but she talked about the importance in today's economy of lifelong learning. And I thought it was very powerful the way she talked about it's not something you graduate out of as a leader of a corporation. That she says that in today's world, you don't get to a point where you have the luxury of not learning new skills, even though it can be uncomfortable, and that it's important in terms of your own adaptability, your growth, but also, she was saying, in terms of leadership, it's an important value to communicate throughout the organization that this is not something that only certain employees need to be thinking about. Mm-hmm. So it's really fascinating to think about as we the mission of extending and expanding access to education. It really covers the whole range of different populations, and obviously I think we're all in this mission of trying to connect more people to those opportunities. And I want to turn to you, Mafer, and to IBM. It's hard to think of a more fabled knowledge incubator than IBM, right? I was in thinking about this conversation, I was reviewing some of the history, and I didn't know this, and maybe some of you do, but IBM's first name was the Computing, Tabulating, Recording Company in the 19th century, which is nice and descriptive. But that's a reminder of all of the various iterations of IBM that we've seen through time, and that speaks to learning by an organization to adapt, right? I mean, IBM employees have won 5 Nobel Prizes. I mean, it's just amazing. And so I want to have you, kind of talk about IBM's relationship to learning, which, there's the organizational learning to adapt over, a century and a half. There's the learning that happens within the workforce, and, on the individual level, both to benefit the company, but also to fulfill your talent, right? And then there's, obviously you're also in the industry of creating, in the business of creating technology and products for consumers that are in this business of education and learning, and which is your area of responsibility at the company. So, take that where you will in terms of talking about IBM's relationship to learning in terms of the corporation overall, and then how it connects to your job, which is the bridge to the academy.
Yeah, for sure. Well, first of all, thank you very much for the invitation and congratulations on this very, very interesting event. It's an honor for IBM to be here with you and to be engaged with these kind of conversations. Well, first of all, let me split my contribution in two parts. One to talk about IBM as a lifelong learning, and the other one to talk about the skills gap. This year, IBM in Mexico City is celebrating 95 years. You can say 95 years as just a number, but we have a lot of innovation in our history, and around the world, 111 years. So the way we are transforming the company is not just about technology. It's all about culture, all about innovation, and of course, knowledge and learning. Within the organization, we have two pillars that are important for IBMers. One, the role of innovation in our company for company's growth, and the other one, the skilling, upskilling, and reskilling. So with these two pillars intertwined, we can blueprint the way the company is making this innovation, this engagement, and of course the way we are growing and the way we are helping our collaborators, our IBMers, to become part of these changes and of these innovations. At IBM, we have different resources to help our IBMers increasing their skills, reskilling, upskilling, and so on. First of all, we have learning platforms powered by AI so that we can provide learning adapted to the needs that they need to accomplish. The second part are the career conversations. The third part are the coaching and mentoring. All the IBMers are very happy giving their time to support other IBMers that are turning their careers in another sense, in another way, or becoming new employees for IBM. So that is very important in the company for growth and for position the culture of innovation. And the last one are the BRGs to promote knowledge sharing in a diverse ability environment. The second part goes around closing the skills gap. That is the part that you are mentioning about our social responsibility. Last year, in October 21, we made let me say the word correctly. We made a commitment, a global commitment, to train 30 million people about technology, but not only technology. We have to train people in professional skills. We have to learn, or making people learn, to understand how innovation comes to real life, how innovation plays the correct role in companies, and so on. So we'll launch IBM Skills Build. IBM Skills Build is a platform so that everyone in the world can start learning from what I mentioned, zero to hero. You can start working without knowledge of technology, without knowledge of any skill, and get an entry-level job in technology. So this is a very important part where we can start sharing IBM resources, all the innovation, all the work from our subject matter experts, to go to real life and start taking a place in the industry with the correct skills and the correct abilities that you have to compete in this economy, in this digital economy.
And I'm sorry, these are offered, this is a platform that I can access as an outsider, and it's
exactly.
And for free?
Yeah, for free. And let me talk about the learners that we cover in Skills Build. At Skills Build, we have three main profiles of learners. Young learners, to start with students that are in high school or in this elementary education, so that they can start creating their abilities, they start understanding technologies, and start innovating and exploring technology. The second, and one of the most important because of my role, it's the college students. The college students are the students that are in universities and that they want to go to the market with the correct abilities to gain a correct position, a new position, or a starting position. And then the adult learners, that are the people that are in a job role nowadays, but they want to turn their careers maybe to technology or any other career in innovation, and they will start from zero, as I mentioned, to hero. So we have a lot of possibilities at Skills Build so that the students, teachers, professors for start creating contents, education programs, and so on. Without our resources, our digital credentials, and all the courses that we have available for free.
Excellent. Yeah, you talk a lot about closing a skill gap, and I was also really impressed, and maybe a little surprised, I don't know, reading through some of your materials that, IBM feels that part of its mission is to democratize opportunity when it comes to learning, which again, there's quite a convergence, I think, in terms of what we're trying to do, and I think that opens doors to more of these partnerships. Speaking of partnerships, Tec de Monterrey and ASU, we're real kindred spirits. And I should give a shout out to Raul Rodriguez, who is one of the reasons why our two institutions work closely together. He's at the Tech, oversees a lot of the international engagement, among many other things. He's also one of the founders of the U.S.-Mexico Foundation. But President Crow has always been amazed at the Tech. We both have the sort of innovative spirit, DNA, I think, that we share. But one of the things that President Crow of ASU always marvels at whenever he comes back from talking to people at the Tech, he's like, I don't quite get it. They're a private university. So President Crow came to ASU a couple decades ago from Columbia University, and he speaks very highly of what Columbia does, and it has its role and its mission, but it's not a public university, and he's very clear on that distinction in terms of the mission that Maria alluded to in our charter. But he says, talk to the Tech, and they're a private university, but they speak so much about their public responsibility. That's the part that he marvels at. And so I think if he were here, he would ask you, how do you think about balancing your responsibility to educate, your tuition-paying students on your various campuses across Mexico, and it's a very competitive, rigorous university, and the tuition can be considerable for those students that don't get financial aid, and I realize a lot too. But at the same time, you have this mission to society that's very much ingrained in the Tech's history, and just kind of remarkable. But how do you navigate those dual challenges and then scale learning to look to the rest of society? How do you manage that?
Thank you, Andres, for the invitation, and the admiration towards Arizona State University is mutual. We have learned a lot from Dr. Crow and you and the rest of the team. We had breakfast this morning, also learning from what Maria and her team are doing. As you said, Tech is a private nonprofit institution, but we like to describe ourselves as an institution that is from society and for society. In the end, we were founded by a group of businessmen that were worried about the opportunities for young Mexicans, and since our foundation almost 80 years ago, I also like to use the phrase of understanding that we need to take fundamental responsibility from the well-being of our communities. That's something that we learned from Arizona State University. And we also have a fiduciary, we'll say, responsibility to our tuition-paying students. We have close to 90,000 tuition-paying students. But I think that our scale and our mindset also gives us the opportunity to identify these learning assets that we already have and share them with the community. And we think it will be better for the community, but it will also be better for Tech students. So in addition to our high school undergrads and graduate students that we have, we also have more traditional continuous educational offerings. We serve 140,000 students through that one. I was asking for updated numbers. We started launching our Coursera and edX courses in 2014. More than 2 million people have started those courses, 70% of them outside of Mexico. We understand that MOOCs is not the solution, and many of them don't finish, but at least the opportunities are there. We also are increasingly doing it more open and more collaborative. We have a collaboration agreement with other 2 Latin American universities, Católica de Chile and Uniandes, And for example, we asked Coursera if we could share our courses with those communities and allow them to have access for free for the certificate, and they say yes, and that led for the Coursera for Campus initiative during the pandemic, in which all the participants of Coursera shared the certification availability of all the, so this mindset of being open. Also, about a month ago, we launched our social impact report, and we identified that we have as a community, our students, our faculty, our board members, the institution itself, more than 120 initiatives that are aligned to one of the SDGs, and out of those, close to a quarter of them are around education. So there are 120 initiatives that somebody at Tech is leveraging to grant access, improve quality, fight for equity and inclusion in education across, all the way from kindergarten to lifelong learning and adults. So I think it's the mindset, the first piece of understanding that we have a lot of assets and that we're privileged, and therefore we have the responsibility to share them with our communities. But also I think the scale and the use of technology, that's also I think a tradition at Tech. We started with master programs, distance master programs that were satellite based. This was pre-internet in the 80s, and I think that's also allows us to think about scale and quality and sharing what we have with the rest of the community.
Great, yes. And one of the assets that we have also shared through the years, I should mention, of course, is Dr. Rafael Sauceman, who, when he left the Tech after many years as a rector, Michael Crow was quick to want to work with him to help sprinkle some of that tech sensibility at ASU, and he was he's been a fantastic. I'm trying to think of the noun, because he's just a door. If door opener were a noun for us, for a university with Mexican partners, and it's just amazing that even when he deserved to enjoy his retirement, he was tirelessly working around the clock to create programs for us to build capacity among teachers in Mexico on using technology. And we did an event in Mexico City with him in January of 2020 on distance learning and tech and education. We did this with Google, and it was kind of prophetic because we were, a couple months before the pandemic. But
he's never going to retire.
No, he's an inspiration to us all. So now I need to turn to Melissa, who really is. We were joking earlier. So in Structure, one of your products, the product that most of us are familiar with, and is Canvas, of course. So we're talking about platforms and how we can share content on platforms, and I understand that Tec de Monterrey uses Canvas as its sort of course software. We certainly do at ASU. I teach at our Cronkite school, and our classes wouldn't happen without Canvas. That's where we share. It's the course materials with the students and the organization of the class, and they submit their papers and stuff. And then my son in high school in Maryland, they also use Canvas. So sounds a little bit like a monopoly here. Well, we'll leave that for a different panel. No, but tell us about what you see in terms of these collaborations. Obviously, you work very closely with a lot of academic institutions, apparently public school districts in Maryland and universities in Mexico and in Arizona, but you also are working with the private sector, and that's a little. It's no coincidence that we have here represented two private sector entities and two academic institutions, because I think if we're really going to succeed at having effective lifelong learning, we need to bridge these two worlds. And you have a program of upskilling with Walmart, I believe, and to talk a little bit about what you see from Instructure's perspective on different entities coming together to create this kind of content in a way that's accessible and really makes a difference.
Yeah. And thank you so much for having me here, having Instructure here. It's an honor to be with a group of a panel that really represents life-changing innovation for individuals around the world. And that's really what we want to do as well. We want to be able to create technology that enables these kinds of relationships, these kinds of partnerships, and this kind of innovation to happen. And so just for a little context on Instructure, we did start about 12 years ago in higher education in the United States, but we quickly realized that in order to achieve the kind of mission that the institutions we were working with wanted to achieve, we needed to think more broadly. We needed to think globally. We needed to think about the lifelong journey from kindergarten, even younger, all the way through the 80-year-olds looking to continue to advance their own knowledge and skill building. And in order to do that, the private sector plays a really key role. It plays a key role in the relationships for the institutions, and it plays a key role for us in how we build our technology to make sure that these kinds of partnerships are facilitated. So you mentioned Walmart. This is a good example of a relationship where we have that's focused on the development of employees within Walmart and the engagement in their own learning experiences, and then the transferability of those experiences, so that as they journey either in their own career in Walmart or outside of Walmart, they are able to take those skills and contribute to the communities that they're in or the organizations they're in meaningful ways. And I think there's three pieces to this that are really important. And it's for any platform, whether it's Canvas, which is our main platform, as you mentioned, whether it's Coursera, whether it's a platform that is AI-based that IBM is developing. All of those platforms need to be thinking about, in order to enable these kinds of public-private partnerships, making sure those platforms are flexible and can be transformed in different ways, so learning can appear in different ways. Making sure they're integratable. This is really important. Being able to not only build ecosystems and ensure that the different technologies that are going to drive an experience can work really seamlessly together, but also get the data out of that so that you can see the impact you're having and how you're moving that impact forward as a community. And then third, I think it's access. And so much of what we've all talked about already is about access. How do we make sure that through the platforms that are behind the scenes in a lot of ways, we're enabling the kind of access to the programs that you're all developing, or the kind that Walmart or other large organizations are looking to develop.
So what would be an example of the type of content that you would develop with Walmart?
So the content there, they're taking very tactical employees. So in a Walmart store, for example, someone might need to know how to stock shelves. And they're building content, and then through our technologies, they're able to badge that content. And now that employee can take that and say, as they're looking to potentially be a manager or a supervisor for a particular section of the store, they're able to take that and demonstrate their skills. What they also can do from a Walmart perspective is they can enable employee shift building. So now that I know this employee has the skill and I need to make sure that I'm leveraging that employee in the right ways, I can use that in order to ask them to go to a different store and train, ask them to engage in community activities where they might be helping other young learners transition into their workforce. So that's the kind of content. It can be as simple tasks that employees want, all the way up into leadership and management skills as we're looking at broader programs.
Okay. Yeah, that's helpful. And maybe this is a good place to pivot to sort of how individuals are going to experience this brave new world of lifelong learning that Monica Aspa yesterday was also referencing. I think in my day, when I graduated from college in the 80s, there was a sense that like we're done with education, or then I went to grad school, but there was a graduation date, and then it's like you celebrate, your parents come, they take your picture, you're wearing the funny hat, and you're done with with learning, and then you get a job, right? And there's some training and stuff, but so. As we shift in this mindset of becoming lifelong learnings, because we've talked a lot about the macro approach by our institutions, but if you think about people graduating from undergrad or high school or grad school these days, what is their relationship with learning going to be going forward? And, you know, we're providing that at the ASU Learning Enterprise, but maybe, Maria, you can talk a little bit about what should be the expectation of how someone, through the course of their life, is going to transform this mindset of becoming a lifelong learner.
Yeah. No, thanks, Andres. And, you know, as we think about lifelong learning, innovation is accelerating at such a rapid pace, right? You think about quantum, artificial intelligence, advanced manufacturing. I mean, it goes on and on. Biotechnology, you can go on and on and on. And so to think that you're graduated and you're going to be set for life is really not a reality anymore. And so what we want to do is really prepare our students from day one that they can graduate, but they haven't left ASU. In fact, we've now created a program called ASU for Life. So the day you graduate, you get an email saying, welcome to ASU for Life. And now that's going to prepare you to keep learning. And so now we know what you studied, the skills you have from the day of graduation, and now we can help you keep growing those skills by saying, well, what do you need? Day one, you might say, okay, I actually don't have a job yet, so let's help you get a job. You might say, okay, I got my job, but I don't know how to do a first job. I've never had a professional job. How do you enable someone to do that? Maybe they're 3 years in now, they're looking for a promotion. They've never been a manager. How do we say, oh, great, let's help you figure out how to be a manager and prep you for that. You might switch industries and all of a sudden you need a basic course. You were a business major and you really need to know about this, microelectronic industry, and we have whole specializations on that. So the idea is to really be relevant in a just-in-time basis for our students, the way they're expected in every other service that is available now. You think about Amazons or Netflix of the world. People expect what they want, when they want it, immediately. And education has been slow at figuring out, well, how do we adapt to that sort of need by saying, no, we have these rigid requirements. You can only do it at this time for this price if you meet these requirements. And so we are rapidly moving into a world where people can have all their skills available to them. They know what they are, they know where they need to learn, and they need to know and how they're going to get to grow. And we can quickly say, these are the types of courses or communities or cohorts or services or experiences, like coming to these forums, that you need to keep growing. So that's how we see it from an individual standpoint.
Mm-hmm. Great. And at IBM, again, folks, let's stick with the individual standpoint for a minute. What is my expectation when I join IBM and thinking about the years ahead? You talked about Skills Build, which is a public offering, but what's sort of the expectation of the opportunities, but also maybe like the expectations of me as now a career-long or lifelong learner, and maybe how is that changing?
Let me share with you about my history first of all.
Great.
When I started at IBM, I become from banking industry.
Oh.
So I was very focused in a technical job. When the team at IBM invited me to join this team, an education team, I was like, yes, I like to become in the education industry, but IBM do not sell education. So let's check what's going to be happening. Once I started at IBM, my position goes by different business units. So I started in marketing, then research, then HR, nowadays social responsibility. So becoming a technical person that understands marketing, research, human resources, and social responsibility was like crazy in my mind. I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do? So what I have to say thank you to IBM is that I had the opportunity to meet a lot of people that engaged with me and helped me in that journey to understand how to create a strategy, how to go and sell the technology that we are creating, and how to make different changes in my professional career to be in the role that I'm nowadays. So, as I mentioned, in our history, we have been pioneers in different technological innovation, and that's why we have to change our minds. We have to change our way of doing things. And in that sense, you have to expect IBM not only as a company, but also as a school, as a way to start living your best moment in your professional career, and of course, be proud of the colleagues that you're going to face with, the people that you're going to meet, and the growing in knowledge that you're going to get. We are always attracting new talent. We are always helping growing the talent, as I mentioned in my experience, and definitely our staff are engaged with our learning platforms, are committed with the challenges that we have during the year to be trained, to be certified, and so on. So what you are going to expect are, let me say, growing knowledge, meet people, be coached, be mentored, so you have diverse opportunities to continue learning.
What was the most challenging thing you've had to learn as you've made all these shifts within the organization and your career?
I think the very first moment, because as I mentioned, I become from a very technical role. So when I start working with a team in marketing, was like, oh my God, why do I have to understand all these strategies, all these numbers and all that stuff? I just want to do things and that's it. So there's when you notice that the training continues, not after the degree and that's it. The training continues, the knowledge needs to increase, the knowledge needs to be transformed. So I think the most important challenge for me was to start working with different teams, different mindsets, different abilities, of course.
As you were talking, I was reminded of a story my father would tell us, kind of laughingly. He talked about, when marketing was a kind of a new buzzword in the 60s, he interviewed for a job at Coca-Cola here in Mexico. And they said, well, we really need somebody to do some marketing. And my dad had no idea what marketing was, but he's sitting in the interview, he's like, oh yeah, marketing is great, it's fascinating. I want to do marketing. And he left the interview, he's like, what the heck is marketing? Because back then it was a new term. And he didn't have, he couldn't go to Coursera or go online and find a course from the Learning Enterprise or go on Skills Build. So I think he found a book and he faked it. But it
yeah, and that's where you face with the idea or with the mindset that there are no easy skills. Each person has different needs, has different ways of learning, and the companies need to be ready to adapt if they want to grow, if they want to be transformed.
Yeah.
We have to be ready to adapt to the people needs, to the company needs, and start going forward.
So to get this even further down the road of practicality, you referenced people being certified with certain skills. You were talking, Juan Pablo, about certification in terms of the Coursera offerings you have with the Triada. This idea of what are our credentials and what does a certification look like for lifelong learning? Because again, we have centuries worth of this idea that a diploma and a certain degree confers certain certification, and people read into it all of these assumptions about what someone's prepared to do or not do. And then as we are lifelong learners and it's just a constant process, I feel like we're in this challenging moment of like, well, we need to kind of still validate it and quantify it, and I should get this credit, and I should then, there's value, as you pointed out, Melissa, in somebody at Walmart knowing that this employee has put in all this effort and acquired these skills, right? So Juan Pablo, talk about how you all think about that as the tech kind of leaves the traditional sandbox and is thinking about all of these opportunities in lifelong learning. How are you meeting that challenge of certification and credentials?
Sure. It's a great question, and I think it's something that we still don't have all the answers, and that we collectively can collaborate to come up with them. We have, in the past, couple of years, really doubled down on what we call alternative credentials. We actually participated with UNESCO in coming up with a common definition of what a micro-credential means. and we came up with a definition of like it needs to be a unit of knowledge or competence that it's on itself valuable. So it's not that tiny, it's a little bit more, but it doesn't need to be by far not even an entire degree. That somebody needs to be able to certify that knowledge and that competence, and that the person or the entity that it's certifying it, it's renowned or is recognized by the marketplace to be a good certificator of that. What does that mean? It's still very much in the design. We're experimenting with different pilots. Some of our continuous education programs include micro credentials, some granted by tech. We're increasingly looking for partners that can also grant the certifications. We're also doing it for some of our degree-seeking students. So, for example, in our architecture school, we defined 8 micro-credentials that students could gain in parallel to their degrees. One of them was bio-design for sustainable architecture. So faculty got together and said, if you prove me that you took these courses or have these experiences or done this reading and we can assess that you did that, we're going to grant you a micro certificate. But again, these are very small initial steps. Yeah. I do think there's still an open conversation on how to define a more common language among institutions. So these micro-credentials can be bundles, stacked, that can lead to macro-credentials and at some point degrees. And also, I was discussing with our innovation team yesterday, because right now we have the mindset that it needs to be an institution. But why, I know Andres knows a lot about sports marketing, why don't you become a certifier of micro competence in that? So I think it's going to be very interesting coming years, and there's a potential for a lot of innovation, for a lot of the use of technology as well if we want to scale this. But I do think that will help in the employability and the collaboration elements of lifelong learning.
Yeah, Maria, Melissa, I know this is a topic that's sort of top of mind for a lot of people. So I just want to give you each both an opportunity to weigh in on this question and how you all are thinking about it. So
yeah, I'm happy to. So from an alternative credentials perspective, I think there's 2 pieces. There's the piece of, as a learner, I want to be able to build a journey and really demonstrate that journey, whether it's part of perhaps a more traditional degree-seeking experience or separate from it. And the credentialing, whether it's badging or certificates or however, or credits, some institutions will issue credits to then future learning experiences, whatever that acknowledgement is, that needs to be, as Juan Pablo was talking about, stackable so that you can build pathways out of that over time. Because if we think of a lifelong learner, you may experience you may have a first piece of a journey and you get a credential for that, and then 5 years later you might find yourself in a new role in a workplace and you build onto that and you've now stacked onto that experience and demonstrated that development or that growth in a path. I also think they need to be portable and they need to have some relevancy or some currency attached to that. And Juan Pablo also talked a little bit about the value and how we can come together as a community to drive that value. But I think those 2 pieces, again, whether they're in parallel or they're completely separate, enable learners to be more productive contributors to their workplace and to their communities. Because often what might be in a more traditional degree program is very specific to a discipline, but there's a skill set, a citizenship skill set, or a way to think about solving problems skill set that needs to come in parallel that can then have impact both on, again, your work journey or even your own, community journey that you might have.
Yeah, thanks, Melissa, for that. We are also really focused on stackability, but I think there's 2 kind of important mindsets that we as educators, I think, have to shift, right? So one is, I think the stackability is important from having learners be able to say they have the relevant skill sets regardless of how much education they've had. So in the US, we have 34 million people with some college, no degree. And we don't count that as them having any actual credential.
I'm sorry, 34 million
People
People.
that have some college but no degree.
I see.
And
Wow.
so we are not validating the skills that people already have.
Right.
So I think we have to solve that issue as well. And so how we think about being able to give folks credentials for the skills that they already have and then be able to stack on top of that, I think is critical. And then number two is the navigation, right? There's already, people in this room have been actually very successful at lifelong learning. You know, I started my career as an auditor. I'm now running lifelong learning. Did I not have to learn a ton of stuff along the way? Do I have any certification around what I know? Not really, but it's worked out for me. But there are 90% of the people does not work for. And so that means we actually have to create navigation systems for all the people that we've excluded from the ability to be mobile and move up because they don't know how to navigate, or they might not, okay, they can get stackable credentials or alternative credentials, but they may not know where that leads, et cetera. So we really have to take ownership of helping learners navigate their growth. So.
I mean, sorry, if I can,
Please.
something that I've been thinking a lot, it's somehow we're splitting the intrinsic value of the education that you're getting from the certification. And many times what it's interesting is the education piece is for free.
Yeah.
But what we're finding out is that we can charge for the certification, which has a lot of implications going forward for institutional educations.
Such as?
So what's truly the value of that we bring to society, and do these two things need to be bundled or not?
And that's where the helping learners understand who they are as a learner, I think is what you're both touching on. Like, part of that experience is, how do I learn how to navigate? How do I learn what I am as a learner? How do I best learn? How do I go into new environments and be successful? We don't teach that anywhere. I mean, I started my career as a high school teacher. We don't teach that, and we need to be thinking about that embedded in this, so that we're not only building people with skills that can contribute, but we're building actual learners that are very aware of how they learn.
It's funny how, technology seems to be this double-edged phenomenon where a lot of us sitting in rooms like this can think, oh, this is wonderful, we're all going to be more connected, we all have amazing opportunities, amazing platforms we can access, and it's going to have a leveling effect on society, it's going to democratize access and opportunity, it's going to extend and expand access to education. And then sometimes we find out, well, because it's not, we can think they're accessible, but maybe they aren't, in fact, and how you navigate. And so then there can be this sort of result where we create new divides because only certain segment of population is really taking advantage of these fantastic opportunities. What are some of the historical sort of force fields that are still in the way of fulfilling the promise of these technologies? You started alluding to this a little bit, Maria, but maybe talk more about that.
Yeah, no, that's something we think about every single day on this, and how you remove those force fields. And a lot of it for us has to do with just removing the artificial barriers to really gain entry to a higher education institution. And so, for example, we have universal learner courses, which are open access university courses that you can take, and you don't have to pay for them unless you, back to certification actually, unless you want a certification saying that ASU will give you credit for that. And what that allows is for learners that may be unsure, is college for me? Do I think I can perform at this level? There's all these questions, and yet we make people apply, go through this long process, say we're committed to paying tuition for a whole year, and what if that's not exactly what they needed at the exact moment? And so thinking about learners and where they're at and creating as many alternatives and possibilities and options for them that are flexible and meet them where they are is a way that we're expanding the funnel, I think, at the foundational learning edge, to say, okay, how, and so right now, as a partnership example, we have over 300 Title I schools, which are basically our low-income schools in the US, where our universal learner courses are actually being offered with the local high schools. And so what that allows is for both the technology piece, which we provide, and the curriculum and the university kind of stamp, but with the supports, the local supports of the teachers that are there with the local high school students, to make sure that they don't say, oh, this isn't for me, right? That they really have the supports they need at the local level. So I think in order to create access, we are going to have to think about these hybrid offerings where you're really partnering super high quality technology enabled curriculum with really localized supports.
Okay. I want to shift to questions, comments from the audience in a couple of minutes, but very quickly I wanted to offer our two private sector representatives on the panel to tell us maybe things where you feel like we in the academy fall short, where you feel like universities could do better in terms of creating partnerships with you. You know, we could spend hours here talking about how wonderful and innovative ASU and the Tec de Monterrey are and how adaptable and nimble we are, but, you know, hold our feet to the fire and tell us, you know, where do we fall short in terms of creating these partnerships? What would IBM want to see more of from the academy?
Thank you. Definitely education institutions play a key role here. But nowadays, we cannot assign the task of developing talent just to the schools. This must be a shared task where industry must participate and must share resources and must share the specialists, the localized talent to help students getting new opportunities. And also, I am very proud of the institutions that are collaborating today, because I'm sure that they are working to create education not just for 18 to 22 ages. We have to educate people to be a lifelong learner. So I think that this is a part where we must be participating, where we must be working with universities, creating new curriculum, creating the new ways of teaching or of learning. For example, boot camps, for example, apprenticeships, internships, all the way we can share the experience to the students to get a new job, to get that new opportunity, because the talent exists, but the opportunities maybe are not, because we are not ready. Mm-hmm. So that's why we definitely should be collaborating in this task and continue generating content, resources that can help the students and in any time of their lives and then in any time of their careers to continue growing.
Okay.
I'll expand on that just very briefly. Please, universities, and I know both of you do this really well, develop more content creators. Help people learn how to build content in these situations. And please also develop more new thinking facilitators of that content. I think this is where we see a gap. The pandemic made it very apparent to us that there are not the skills out there globally in individuals that have the opportunity to teach, to either build content that's accessible in the right way and that's doing all the things we've described, and or to facilitate that content or to teach that content. So produce more of those people, please.
Thank you. And quick answers on this one question from our universities, and then we'll shift to the audience. But looking ahead, when Enrique Perret convenes us here in 2050 for the 29th North Capitol Forum, how will our universities look different than in trying to deliver on this need for lifelong learning? And if you have any quick thoughts on how we might do this in a more, with more collaborations across the border to strengthen, North America. So, small question, so you can do a quick answer. Juan Pablo.
I mean, I hope and I dream, and I think we're working towards that at Tech, that we will move from a degree granting institution to a community of learners. That I love the concept of ASU for life or Tech for life, that you understand that learning, it's an intrinsic part of your life, and it's not something that you do and then you pause and then you do, but it's more continuous, and that also we understand that we can learn from each other, and then we can learn from different sources and different institutions, and we create this sense of a better collective future through learning.
Maria?
Well, I love Juan Pablo's future, and what I would add to that is and that there is seamless collaboration with our corporate partners and our platform partners, so that learners it's an ecosystem of learning as well. And so you don't have to learn something new if you want to take a course at Tech and at ASU, and you're taking some IBM things as well, but that it's really an integrated ecosystem.
Great. So let's turn this all to you. Isabel, do we need microphones, or do I just... yes, you did tell us at the beginning.
Thank you so much. I have a question for Juan Pablo.
Can you just introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name is Hector Lacey. Actually, I study at Tech.
Okay.
To graduate, I also work at McKinsey & Company. Okay. My question is to you, Juan Pablo. Basically, right now, Tech students, I think the term we listen to the most is competencias transversales, right? We listen to a lot of, I don't know if I would translate it as cross-wise competences. I think this is the basis for lifelong learning. The thing or the problem I see is that Mexico is a country that really focuses its educational system on like a really rigid box, and we're really technical from what I've seen. You know, if you look into not only other universities but high schools, people tend to have problems adapting to this competencias transversales system. So how can we change that? How can we change this paradigm and permeate these ideals that these skills and this like basic competences such as teamwork are essential for lifelong learning?
Thank you for the question, and thank you for being here. I mean, at Tech we had this profound discussion of whether we did a benchmark of universities across the world, and just as an example, for example, if you see, if you were to become a chemical engineer in Stanford or a chemical engineer in Cambridge, if you went to Cambridge, 100% of the subjects will be related to chemistry. 100%, not a single ethic course or that. If you went to the US institution, it's more like 60-40. Yeah. And we define the definition, and these are I-shaped versus T-shaped type of programs. And in Tech, we decided that we wanted to educate more holistic leaders and went for a T-shaped type of educational model, and we defined 7 transversal competences that we want to our students to develop, whether they're studying medicine, law, engineering, or marketing. One is mindset, I think. Some institutions, if you ask academics, there's not enough courses in chemistry for them to teach their own students. So I think who decides on the programs and the governance of the institution plays a role. Also regulations. I think at Tech, we are blessed that we have some flexibility. I don't want to get technical, but we're a Escuela Libre Universitaria, which grants us some flexibility as to how we define our programs. Once we define them, then the authorities can regulate that we comply with what we said, but in the design, we have some flexibility. And I do think in the future, there should be a diversity of institutions, some of them probably focusing on more technical talent, and a few trying to educate more holistic people and institutions, but it's hard. The other difficult part for transversal competences is how do you ingrain them in the curriculum, and how do you assess them? Because if you see the list, we're struggling right now. Sustainability thinking, equity and diversity, communication skills, leadership skills, complexity. You end up with a list so large that it's impossible to have specific courses for each one of them. So they need to be part of the way that you co-develop the disciplinary competences. It's a good question. Thank you.
And if I may, I also think this goes back to lifelong learning. And so ASU for you, every graduate got access to professional skills for every one set of courses. So even if you were a biology major or a chemistry major, you got a job at a chemical company, a biotech company, you didn't take any business classes, you can take the whole suite of professional skills for everyone immediately after graduation. So if you stop thinking about it as a one point in time and start thinking about it as a lifelong learning, you can keep, even if a few years you're doing the technical work, if you think about it over a lifelong journey, we can also just create courses that are specifically addressing those competencies.
Thank you. Others? I don't want to forget about this side of the room.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah. Hi, I am Giselle. Thank you so much for the conference. I love it. I am also from DEC, and I belong to a program that allow me to have 100% free tuition because I can't pay for it. And like this one program, there is a lot of other ones that DEC has developed for solve these kind of problems, because as you mentioned, not everyone have the access to this kind of knowledge. So my question is, what will you recommend for students like me to share the skills that we get in a privileged select way? What kind of problems we can develop to dissolve or eliminate these gap, social or economic social gaps?
Mafer, do you want to take
I can answer your question, and thank you for the question. I think that nowadays, with the democratization of technology and education, we are removing this social mind. So what I recommend you entirely to you and all the people that are here that continue being students, and as you have this great opportunity, is to start working, developing your skills in an internship, in apprenticeship. Definitely you have to start growing your career before closing your degree. So when you go to the real life and you start a job in a company or in a startup, the mindset is totally different. You are going to see diversity, you are going to see equity, and that comes out of your mind. So start growing, start learning, and you are going to see that real life is totally different, and you are going to get more and more opportunities.
Thank you.
Well, I'll add that, I think financial aid programs are really important to increase accessibility for all students, but I also think back to creating different alternatives and options. One of the things ASU has done is partner with corporate partners to help folks that are already working full-time. They may not be able to take time off to go to school, even if it was free, because they have to support their families. And so, for example, our Starbucks partnership, you can be working full-time or 20 hours plus at Starbucks and enroll in an ASU degree program. So you don't have to decide between your school and your economic security. You can actually be doing both. And so we think that's why I said that flexibility and optionality, I think, is really critical in increasing access.
And please use your voice as you continue in your career path, just like you're doing today, because wherever you go work, share your experiences. Those organizations then can come back and contribute to these kinds of partnerships that enable the opportunities that you're talking about, and share with the technology systems that you encounter as you go through those journeys as well. Let us know how we can serve you better in those programs, in those journeys.
Thank you.
And sorry, just to add up, and thank you for being here and congratulations. This is a scholarship program that last year we got close to 20,000 applicants, and
Yes.
we only granted 200 scholarships because of the funds. So there's a lot, and many of them are also very talented. And I think something that some of your colleagues from the program also do very well is go back to your high school, go back to your secundaria, and tell your story, because I do think that in Mexico we still need to talk about how education transforms lives and create the possibility of change and inspire the upcoming generation. And thank you for that.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Daniela. I am also a tech student.
By the way, I did not organize this.
I didn't know about this.
Are you getting extra credit?
No, we were invited. I'm also a tech student. I used to work in marketing, but I'm an international business major. And my question is more from your personal experience or opinion. We've talked about this like interdisciplinary paths and this availability of getting new knowledge, of all these opportunities we mentioned in college. But what is your opinion about like this generalization versus specialization path For example, I'm graduating this December, and I have access to, for example, Coursera, that can be from learning how to be a graphic designer or more into literature or into English. I have all of these options, but they're not really related to my major. So I wanted to know your opinion or recommendation of where should we be heading towards, diversifying or specializing.
Melissa, what did you study?
Political science and history.
There you go.
So, and I have part of my group is an engineering team, and I actually started when I left teaching early in my career and transitioned into running educational technology groups. I had to learn very quickly a very specialized skill set to be able to lead those teams that I had no background in. I'll share on the specialization versus diversification. I think you can take either path, but work the other path as you go on into your career. So if you go down the specialization road, that gives you a step into a particular discipline or career into a company or an organization that you may want to go work with, and then work on diversifying your skill sets while you're there. I've worked at Instructure, for example, now 9 years, and I've worked in almost every single department over those 9 years, and now lead 4 of the departments. But that experience, because I came in more specialized from a teaching and learning perspective, that experience has enabled me to be a better contributor to the organization and given me more options. So whatever my recommendation would be, whatever direction you go, work the other direction once you get into your career. So if you go diversified, work some special skills as you get into your career.
I want to add a point here, and because you talk about interdisciplinary. So what we really say at IBM is that with no diverse ability, there is no innovation. So when you have diverse abilities and you have different mindsets and you have different personalities, definitely innovation comes to the table, and of course the culture of lifelong learning. So my invitation for you is always try to do new things. You don't have a writing in stone pathways. You can really do whatever you want to. For example, I am a computer systems engineer, and I work in education, and I love giving classes and all that stuff. So definitely you don't have anything writing in stone. So go ahead and continue improving your abilities in the way you want to. If you want to be a designer, if you want to be political, I don't know. You can do whatever you want.
Yeah. I would say, from a navigation standpoint, I would personally, and this is why I said I think universities really need to help people navigate, right? Because you're looking to, what do I do next? You want to learn, you're ready to learn, but you might need help with the navigation. Starting with technical skills, I think, is always nice because people are looking for that to give you the job, but then quickly getting the other skills that you're going to need and diversifying those, I think, is really critical. So both. It's both and.
Exactly.
It seems like any academic program whose design presumes that you're going to do one thing throughout your life really needs to be rethought and redesigned. And I think that the tech has done that, re-engineered itself for that, and it sounds like you're already thinking the right way. I think just the diversity of experiences that Mafer and Melissa have alluded to within the same organization, let alone moving to another organization, already speaks to that interdisciplinarity. The real jefa here today is Isabel, and she seems to be signaling to me that our time is up. So I would love to keep talking to all of you for hours, but I think this room is going to be needed by somebody else. So thank you all for this conversation.
Thank you, Maria. Thank you, Melissa. Thank you, Andres. Thank you, Mafer. Thank you, Juan Pablo, for this terrific panel. And thank you, special thanks to Arizona State University for being such a terrific affiliate and for being here today. We invite you to the next event, which is a conversation with the Secretary of Economy, Tatiana Cloutier, on the second floor at 1 p.m. Thank you.
Thank you very much.